So I am feeling fall in my body, and I'm feeling really like just drowsy. I had, one of those zazen, those like happy bird zazens, So, but nothing like a little perfection to wake us up in every sense. So, tiny bit of housekeeping. Um, if I sent an email to folks who were registered, and earlier today. So if you think you're registered and you didn't get the email, then that might be an issue to check out with me. If you're not registered and you want to get emails, and sort of one of the things I like to do with these classes at the temple is to be able to kind of just, prior to classes or after classes, to just sort of like offer some nubbin of something to encapsulate things. And if you're listening, I don't know if anyone's streaming in. If you're listening, this is especially true for you online. I don't know why I'm looking over at the computer. You in the ether. I like to be able to communicate by email because that way I can sort of encapsulate things or send readings or send links or send like the YouTube video that I mentioned or whatever. And for this class, rather than order books in advance, with the idea that you're going to purchase them and read them. For some class, if we were like studying the Lotus Sutra together, it'd be like, yeah, you kind of need the Lotus Sutra. But for this, there was no text that it's like, everyone should read this. But I will be Xeroxing things and putting scans of them online so that you can download them. Oops, oh, that one flagged. Yeah, just gather up. Soften the circle and bring them in. Bring them in. Thank you. So can you? We went around the circle and said names and pronouns. If you can. I'm Myobun, she, her. Kyle. Luna. Muna.
I'll hold my breath and you hold your breath.
Thank you for that. So I was just saying that there aren't texts that are required. I mean, this is required sounds so ridiculous. You guys are here because you want to be here. This is coming from what psychologists call intrinsic motivation. So something in you, and in fact, that's really very much to the point of what we're going to be talking about for the next 8 weeks. Something in you is poking you and bringing you here. So there isn't required reading, but I like to be able to communicate by email if that's of interest. And then I also have a Dropbox link with access to the handouts, to if there is a reading that I'm referring to and it's short enough for me to Xerox a copy of it, I'll put it online. So if you did receive an email from me today, you don't need to put your name on this list. If you didn't and you would like to have email access, please put your name and your email address here, and please try to print legibly. Okay, did that make sense? Okay. And then just a super strong encouragement to keep coming to this class, right? The thing about the 6 paramitas, I mean, first of all, there's 6 of them, unless you're a Theravada, in which case there are 10 of them. But there's some number of paramitas, right? And on the one hand, like so many things in Buddhism, we can talk about them sequentially and in discrete terms. And we can sort of see how one might lead into another, or how things might pair and kind of work with each other. But they also all are, each of them, facets of the whole thing. And all 6 of them are facets of the 6th paramita, which is wisdom. And so there's an interconnection that kind of gathers momentum and energy over time. So just a strong encouragement. Life happens, but just to keep on coming. Big thanks to Jacqueline, who's going to be carrying the baton next week. I'm going to be back east doing a workshop on Buddhism and tarot, which is also somehow related to all of this. But keeping that momentum going, and also since maybe the only required text for this class is our own lives and hearts, having an opportunity over time, it's a chunk of time, 8 weeks, to develop some sense of each other and some comfort level with sharing, if that's in the cards for us, or hearing other people share. Um, like everything, like Zazen, time actually helps, right? Okay, that's my pep talk. Any questions about any of this so far? Mm. Yeah, yeah. It's not. you've okay. Oh, and that's another. And I know that Linda, you've got something. You're leaving, and yeah, so you're moving physically. Um, so if you're not able to come and it's your intention to stay connected, I also encourage you to send me an email. Then that way, that also just reinforces the connection and then clues me into what's going on with you. In theory, the tech deities are what they are, but in theory, the classes are being recorded, but I wouldn't rely on that. I would not rely on the recording because the tech deities, they are capricious deities who don't necessarily love us. Okay. So let's dive in. So what is a bodhisattva? What's a bodhisattva? If you're not familiar with that word, uh, have people heard this word before, bodhisattva? Okay. What is it? What does that word mean to you? A Buddha in the making. And Dylan, can you say more? Like, what does it mean to be a Buddha in the making? Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're on the path to Buddhahood, and that's kind of an interesting concept, right? To be on the path toward Buddhahood. If I'm on the path to Portland, well, hopefully I'm not walking, because that would be a long, long road. But there's a destination, right? It's not that way. It's probably that way. If I go that way, I won't ever get there. That may be my problem. Eventually, yeah, exactly, exactly. We do live on a globe. So there's a destination, and I can head there. And I have some sense of both how to get there and what there is, right? And we talk about the path in Buddhism. We talk about that. That's a central metaphor for us all the time. But what does it mean to be on the path toward Buddhahood? Is Buddhahood like a destination that we will arrive at? Is it somewhere out there? What do people think about that question? And this isn't a rhetorical question for those of you who are like, well, of course it's not out there. I've got Buddha nature in me. I read that somewhere. What is your concept of having free location, no matter where you are? Okay. I have a story of something like that I like to offer that room. But it's just like, Yeah. Here's the thing about paths, right? If it's a path that is defined by its destination, the question will always be, how do we know where it is, where that destination is? And the thing about a spiritual path is that there's some kind of weird magic about a spiritual path that says we know where we're going because on some level we already must be there. I remember coming across a book by Sherry Huber, who's kind of an eccentric Zen-y teacher. And it's a little book, and there were all these books that she put out in, like, I think the early 80s, and they're all handwritten, but they were published. So it was very striking. I remember seeing it on a used books shelf and like, what is that? And the title of it was that which you are seeking. Oh, now I've forgotten it. that which you seek is the reason you're seeking. Something like that. Like, wait a minute, this is completely circular. How can the thing that I'm seeking already be the reason I'm seeking? And yet, this idea of the bodhisattva. So, can we get more precise? A technical definition of a bodhisattva. In the Theravadan tradition, in the tradition of the elders, the sort of earliest forms of Buddhism, the notion of a bodhisattva was like there was a bodhisattva, and it was the Buddha before he was the Buddha. He was the bodhisattva with a capital B. And then maybe we might talk about bodhisattvas in some more exalted senses, like the saints, who the bodhis like Avalokiteshvara, bodhisattva with a capital B. Those beings who aren't Buddhas, but yet are somehow in some very, very profound way on the path, like Shakyamuni was before he sat beneath the Bodhi tree. But with the development of the branch of Buddhism that Zen is a part of, Mahayana Buddhism, with the development of that, the emergence of a single idea has really come to be central to our practice, which is the notion of the bodhisattva ideal. And the bodhisattva ideal is this ideal that, like, hey, like Dylan said, this is about being on the path. And this isn't something that is unique to a single entity like Shakyamuni or to a kind of branch of very special beings like, the bodhisattva of compassion. This is a possibility that's true for all of us. How many of us here identify with the idea that I am a bodhisattva, that you are how many of you feel like you're a bodhisattva? Oh, really? Like three and a half, four? Okay. For those who didn't raise their hand, why? Yeah, tell me, what's sticky about it? Oh, to say I'm a bodhisattva, there's a level, yeah? Interesting. Okay. You're saying. So Robert, what is a bodhisattva that makes you think that it would be that it's ego for you to say I'm a bodhisattva? No. Can you unpack it a little bit? Well, how would you define bodhisattva? Okay. So until you embody some of the ideals of being a bodhisattva, all of them. Okay, then you don't have the ground to stand on to call yourself a bodhisattva. And yet, Robert, you have no problem chanting the bodhisattva vows. Okay, so every Sunday, so I love it. So every Sunday, if you come, has everyone here been to Sunday Assembly? No, okay. So, Micah, when you come to Sunday Assembly, you will end up dressing for the job. Because what do we chant at the end of our Sunday Assemblies? Anyone? What? Don't we chant am I misremembering? Do we chant the Bodhisattva?
Yeah, I can't remember.
No, but don't we at the end of the service? Beings are numberless. Am I making this? I'm doubting myself. Okay. Yes, that's the end of the service. I'm sorry, it's not the end of assembly. The end of service. Oh, okay. So, God, you guys are scaring me. Okay, so at the end of Sunday service, right? If you come to our Sunday assembly, at the end of the service, you will chant, beings are numberless, I vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable, I vow to realize it. Okay? So those are the 4 bodhisattva vows. I want to submit to you that technically what it is to be a bodhisattva is to dress for the job you want, right? And that the ground to stand on is nothing other than expressing that intention. That intention, intentionality, aspiration, that is the whole thing. There's nothing other than that. That is our human destiny, is to have aspiration. Not our destiny, our birthright. That is our human nature, to have intentions. That is the thing that makes us capable of practice. That is the thing that marks all of us as Buddhas in the making. So the bodhisattva ideal, what was kind of magical in the development of Buddhism, and this is a very Mahayanist perspective. If you're a Theravadan Buddhist, if you're practicing in the insight meditation tradition, you might be thinking, Myobun is really, she's articulating kind of biased perspective here, that, it's like calling the Hebrew Bible the Old Testament. That makes sense if you're speaking from the standpoint of the New Testament. I digress. But there is this magical, as a Mahayanist, I'll just own it, there is this magical moment in the history of Buddhism where there's a shift to say, hey, what happened under the Bodhi tree, the definitive moment within this tradition, within this world, this whole world, this realm, this eon, the definitive moment was the Shakyamuni Buddha saying, awakening and saying, I, together with all beings and the great earth, awaken at this moment. That together with all beings means that we're all awakened. There's no outside of awakening. And so by default, we all are carrying the Buddha's aspiration. We're carrying the aspiration to awaken. That bodhisattva ideal, is this making sense, by the way? That bodhisattva ideal, try saying that 10 times fast. That bodhisattva ideal, the word bodhisattva just means like a being of enlightenment, okay? A being of awakening. We are all, by default, beings of awakening, okay? In the same way that we are like carbon-based life forms. We are beings of awakening. That's what we are. That bodhisattva ideal, for me, the succinct piece of that, which has become something like a koan or a puzzle that I just carry with me, is what does it mean to live in the truth of together with all beings? What does it mean to live in the truth of together with all beings? To take seriously the heart of a religion that says awakening happened one time with all beings, that we're all ineluctably, ineradicably, inevitably in this together. How do I live that way? Does that question even make sense? Like, how do I live together with all beings? How do I live in that truth? Does that question make sense? So that's the question at the heart of what we're going to be talking about for the next 8 weeks. And to live in the space of that question, to live together with all beings, requires great heart. And, when I say heart, I mean heart/mind, like in Buddhism, both like in pretty much all the languages that we've inherited Buddhism through, there's this possibility of this duality where you're saying mind, but it's not like the Western notion of mind that's separate from the heart. We Westerners think, oh, there's rationality and there's emotion and it's like, no, this is heart-mind. This is our capacity to feel, understand, intuit, express. This is like our stuffness, our humanness, right? Heart-mind. So to live in the space of together with all beings, to live as the bodhisattva that you are, whether you want to be or not. You're carbon-based, and you're a being of awakening, whether you want to be or not, or whether you consciously claim that or not. Requires great heart mind in at least 4 ways. And I'm going to be playing with 4s a lot today. This is the first foursome that's going to come up today. Yeah, please.
So you've been using carbon-based.
Yeah.
Are you referring to human beings in this realm?
Oh, I was speaking kind of loosely. So all I was trying to say is, in the same way that we are like what we're life, organic life, we are beings of awakening. Like it's just what we are. I wasn't speaking in a specific way to single out life forms on this planet. But I was wanting to point to, like, if I want to know what I am, I'm alive. I think I know what that means, kind of. If I want to know, but I actually don't really know what that means. But if I want to know what I am, I'm a being of awakening. I really don't know what that means. Or I think I don't know what that means. I may know more and less than I think. And that's also something that we will be exploring together. Did that help, Linda? So yeah, and just dive in, because once I get cranked up, it just the words will just unfold. So stop me. So in at least 4 ways, we need to be beings of great heart to be bodhisattvas. So on the one hand, we need to have that great heart quality of compassion. And here, by compassion, I almost always actually mean that we just notice suffering, that we kind of shiver internally and externally around suffering. We're tuned into it. So I always think about, the iconography of Kuan Yin, where she's like, oh, God, do I have to hear another mortal? It's just like, oh, there's so much. Because Kuan Yin, the bodhisattva of compassion, that icon of compassion, that sort of saintly archetype of compassion, that her name, same as Avalokiteshvara, which is a male personification of the same ideal. Just a lot of the names for that ideal mean literally the one who hears the cries of the world. So when I say compassion, I don't mean like this special, like, I'm a good person who cares about others. That may be true. I just mean our attunement towards suffering. So we need great hearts to be able, like big, like we need more capacity to be able to do that, which we do all the time. You know what I mean? It's like, I saw this stupid damn TikTok invaded my brain. It wasn't even on, it's like TikTok seems like it's on YouTube now. Is that what's happening? Anyway, it was like titled "Fox Trapped Takes a Nap," and glued into that, and it's like this image of a fox who is kind of grainy. It's one of those GoPro cameras, and the fox's tail is caught in a trap, and it like lay down. And I'm thinking, this is not the fox taking a nap. The way that we feel into that, immediately we're drawn into that. YouTube knows this. The algorithms know this. That's what I mean by compassion. How do we have capacity for that? How do we have greatness of heart enough for that? That's one way. We need to have greatness of heart in terms of our understanding. This together with all beings, like grokking that, getting our minds around what it means to be interconnected with all of the cosmos. What does it mean to recognize that my life is tied up with all lives? That requires great capacity. And this is something we spent a lot of time working with in the ethics class last spring, right? Like, how do I just even hold that understanding? It requires also, I want to say, great courage. And that word courage, the Latin root comes from the word for heart, like Braveheart, right? We need like to be willing to endure the risk of living this vulnerability of together with all beings. That requires some capacity. And the fourth thing I would say, and this is a thing that we often don't talk about, but it's going to be really central for our work together, our play together for the next 8 weeks. We need great imagination. We need actually to build our capacity to imagine what seems inconceivable. We need to grow that capacity. We all have it, but we may distrust it. That ability to open into something that we didn't know we could even envision, or to lean into pictures of things. We live in a world like, TikTok world. We live in a world filled with cheap and readily available and just way overabundant images everywhere. And images, I don't just mean visual images. I mean like bits of information everywhere. It floods us, all sorts of things grabbing our attention. And it has made it harder, I think, for us humans to experience just how magical it is to have an idea or an image or a sound fill us. So, stories, legends, pictures, the kind of teaching stories that in the Zen tradition we call koans, these stories of encounters between teachers, masters, and students, or just practitioners on the way that don't make logical sense. Something is transmitted. The way that we feel when we hear a joke and you get it. That largeness of spirit that like, or when you hear a metaphor and you can't really state why that metaphor worked, but it worked, I remember this, I won't be able to quote it by memory exactly, and I didn't think of this until just now, but there's this amazing line in one of Rilke's Duino elegies, and I just know it in translation, but it's, it's something like, we who have always thought as of sadness as falling will feel the emotion that almost amazes us when a happy thing falls. And I'm like, I don't know what that is, but when a happy thing falls, something there. A book that I recommend, because it's all about this latter quality of the great heart of imagination, is by a Zen teacher, John Tarrant. He's from Tasmania. He practices in Northern California, and he's written a lot on Zen and the imagination, and his Pacific Zen Institute is really into the arts and Zen. And this is a book about koan practice in his tradition. It's called Bring Me the Rhinoceros. It's through this book that I came across this koan, which I think is beautiful for what I'm trying to point at. So it's a koan from, it's in a couple of collections of koans. And these koans, again, a koan is, it's a record of an encounter, often between a teacher and a student, but not always, sometimes between two peers on the path, where somebody gets it. It's like that moment of getting it. Do you know what I mean? And it's always like, and he was greatly awakened. But, just instead of he was greatly awakened, just think they got it. They had a moment of insight, a flash. And actually this koan, nobody gets it. It's just, but it's wonderful. Okay, so one day Yangwan called to his assistant, "Bring me the rhinoceros fan." The assistant said, "It is broken." Yangwan said, "In that case, bring me the rhinoceros." Yangwan called to his assistant, "Bring me the rhinoceros fan." The assistant said, "It is broken." Yangwan said, "In that case, bring me the rhinoceros." That's the encounter. And so this is what Tarrant says about it. He says, "We sometimes think of consciousness as a lamp, making a golden cone of light on the surface of a desk. Outside the yellow circle, everything is dark and unknown. The usual way of approaching things is to try to extend the yellow circle into the darkness, or perhaps to drag objects in from the dark. That is working out of what you can conceive of, the bright area of what you already know. This koan takes things the other way. Here you depend on what is unknown and inconceivable to sustain you. Most of life is inconceivable. Even your left hand can't be fully conceived of, though it can be very useful. And if you try hard to conceive of what your hand does, it won't play the piano very well. Have you ever done breath meditation and focused on your breath and forgotten how to breathe? No. The inconceivable is the source of all that comes into being. The inconceivable is the source of all that comes into being. That emptiness that is at the heart of this together with all beings. That not any one of us owns our stuff, but we share it together. And because of that, actually, there's this huge spaciousness that we all inhabit. That emptiness is the source of all things. This koan is not about making what is unknown known. Instead, it is an exercise in relying on and making friends with the inconceivable, using a casual event to start an exploration into the unlit realms. So I don't actually know what a rhinoceros fan is, but I assume that Yangwan and the assistant did. And it's broken. Like everything in life, it's broken. So what do we do with a world that's broken? Bring me the rhinoceros. Okay? Does this make sense? Am I making sense? Am I being too zen-y? Okay. It might come to make sense if it doesn't now. Let me just pause. How is this, guys? Because some of you I know well, some of you I don't. Is this, and what brings you here tonight? Does anyone want to share what brings them to this class? Besides their feet or their car or their bike? Bring me the rhinoceros. So, and some of you have heard me talk about this before. I hope it's not too ad nauseum, but so I teach mindfulness, in secular settings and totally non-zen-y settings. And one of the things I always say at the beginning of a mindfulness class is I say to the folks there, something brought you here tonight. Maybe it was just your partner saying, you got to go, you're driving me crazy. Or maybe, you read something about meditation, but something brought you here. And beneath that, like, overt sense of why you came, what you're looking for, there's undoubtedly somewhere something poking you. And that poke, that is the awareness, right, of this together with all beings. That's what I'm talking. There's something, that which you are seeking is causing you to seek. There's something that's poking each of us. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here on a Tuesday evening, right? Yeah. Yeah, please. Yeah.
And I was just like, this is the time you actually wake up and still be able to, let's go.
Yeah.
So this is your kind of lazy.
Yeah.
And so I showed up with me as I am instead of feeling bad that I don't show on a Sunday.
Yay.
I was like, I can play now.
So this is exactly it. Like, there's, we do things, we show up, hopefully we show up exactly as we are, right? Which is really hard because usually we show up and there's a whole set of framework of expectations around it that, kind of constrains how we understand ourselves to be. But we show up, we often don't really exactly, I think most of the time, we don't really exactly know, we don't know where Portland is, We don't know where we're heading, what we're wanting. or we kind of know, but then if we reflect on it, we realize that what we think we know now is different from what we knew a month ago. And so, this sense of the imagination I'm bringing forward is to how do we expand our capacity to lean into the stuff that we don't actually know what's impelling us, but to stay with our experiences long enough to clarify more and more who we are, which is to say, to clarify more and more what we want. Okay? Our aspiration, our intentionality is everything. And that's what, so, Wilcox, I totally get vows. Vow is just an expression of intentionality. And, most of the vows that we are expected to make in a culture have a whole bunch of history behind them and institutions behind them. But at their heart, this is just about intentionality. I want to introduce another foursome. Okay, so we had this foursome about the quality of the mind, heart, this greatness, that is our attunement to suffering, the way that we can feel suffering, feel the suffering of all beings, our understanding, the way that we can kind of understand what it means to be all in this together. Our what was the third one? Courage. Oh, that one's important. Our willingness to take risks, and finally, our imagination. Second foursome I want to introduce is like the biggie for Buddhism, the grandparent of them all, the Four Noble Truths, which we talked a little bit about, some of us, a couple weeks back. The Four Noble Truths. What are they? What are the Four Noble Truths? This is at the core of Buddhism. So the Buddha under the Bodhi tree, well, he wasn't quite the Buddha yet. The Bodhisattva with a capital B under the Bodhi tree. The Four Noble Truths are what he wakes up to, right? Does anyone want to share what they remember of them? Yeah. 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 So there's suffering, right? There's the sense that there's a cause of suffering. There's the sense that it's possible to not suffer, and there's a path through it. One of the things about the Four Noble Truths, again, it's in this realm of that which you seek is causing you to seek. The suffering that the Buddha comes to understand, that's why actually he goes to meditate under the tree, right? Because his awareness, in the Four Noble Truths class, I was talking about this in terms of the story of the Wizard of Oz, that all of us have at least once, maybe many, 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 many times in our lives, these somewhere over the rainbow moments, right? Where it's life is kind of broken. Things are kind of broken. But I have this sense that there's Portland. Maybe Portland. There's somewhere, I'm just using the Portland metaphor from earlier. I have a sense that there's somewhere over the rainbow, right? There's somewhere else, and I'm going to go there. Why do I think there's somewhere over the rainbow? Because I'm aware that things aren't quite right. I'm aware, and the Buddha's yeah, something's not quite right. And so he wakes up to this truth of suffering. And suffering is one of the great, I think, ways that we tend to get it wrong about suffering is that people tend to think, well, we suffer because we hold on to things that are impermanent, right? Have you guys encountered that idea before? Wilcox, you look like you have a thought. No, share. Okay. Okay. But have you come across that thought, that our suffering is because, the past is gone, the future isn't here, all we have is the present. If we could just be in the present, everything's always changing, right? And so people often confuse Buddhism with the idea of stoicism, right? This idea that if we could just not be so attached, if I could just get over myself, if I could just not be so attached to things, if I could be not so attached to outcome, if I could be not so attached to health or all the things that I want, if I could be not so attached to getting rid of the stuff I don't want, then I would not suffer, right? So the Buddha, before he was the Buddha, practiced as an ascetic for 6 years, did everything he could to kill attachment, right? Which you can do. I mean, you can like mortify the flesh, basically act as if you're already dead, as if you've let go of everything. You can, you know, starve yourself. You can give up everything you own. You can give up all pleasures. The Buddha is coming from a life of total privilege, from a life of of hedonism, of saying hedonism in the very strict sense of that word, which is, you know, the human life is all about actually experiencing satisfaction of what we need. That's what we should all aim for. He came from that life of trying to satisfy needs and moved into, and by the way, there are chairs if you're uncomfortable on cushions. We forgot to mention that. So if anyone wants to have cushions. Speaking of satisfying comfort, it's actually a good idea. Because what the Buddha came to is like mortifying the flesh is no better than just giving into the flesh, right? It's not about killing attachment or being attached. Killing attachment is just an inverted form of being attached, like suppressing all your desires is another attachment, right? So the cause, right, of this suffering is not exactly attachment, but the way in which we're stuck in these loops. And that's one of the great ironies of the Four Noble Truths, is this recognition that everything is always changing, and yet somehow nothing changes. Right? We talked about that in the Four Noble Truths class a bit, right? Somehow we try to change in this world of change, and yet we end up replicating the same patterns over and over and over again. So part of what I want this class to be able to help us do is for us to imagine that change is actually possible. It doesn't seem to come from cutting off the things that we want or grabbing onto the things that we want. It comes from this thing that the Buddha called a middle path, but that middle path isn't going to be a pathway between the extreme of cutting off desires or giving into desires, because if it's just between two extremes, it is itself, right, going to define more extremes. An example of that in my own life, I spent a year where it's like, I'm going to stop buying shit. I'm going to stop buying retail shit. So I will allow myself to go to Goodwill, but I'm not going to buy anything new, except for things like underwear. I'll buy new underwear, and I'll buy food, okay? But I'm not going to, and guess what happened to Goodwill in that year for me? It became the emporium of all things, right? You know, so the middle path of the Buddha, that is the release from suffering, isn't like a middle path between two extremes, because that's just going to create, you know, you can narrow your bandwidth and you still have extremes. You know what I mean? So how do we change? Does anyone have any ideas about that? Because if so, we can really go home early. Now we've gotten rid of the pandemic, and now we've gotten rid of the problem of nothing ever changes. But does this question make sense? Yeah. Sure, indeed, if you care to. Maybe we can, if we can somehow linger with 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 what's going on for us in these moments. Yeah. So again, like how do we sort of being called to the space of having a capacity to be with this life of ours? Um, and um, I keep these days being drawn to, again, like this question of imagination and how do we open ourselves? How do we make it possible for things to change? Now, there's all sorts of technical ways that Buddhism describes how we don't change. And we touched upon that a little bit in the Four Noble Truths class in terms of like how, desires arise and then kind of get into patterns and how this all gears up. But we can think about this in very, very simple terms, like, the minute I want something, it's over there and outside of me. And now I have a self, and there's something out there. And now I'm no longer together with all beings, right? I've created separation. So just that movement of wanting somehow cuts us off from this fundamental truth of our nature that we are together with all beings. How do I heal that? So here's where another foursome, I briefly talked about the Four Noble Truths. Now I got to talk about the Fab Four. And actually, the guy that John Lennon called, the guy that Paul McCartney called Old Four Eyes. Apparently, Paul McCartney, when he was arguing with John Lennon, would call him Old Four Eyes. And then John Lennon called Paul McCartney Pigeon Chest. I don't know why. Okay, so let's see. You guys know this. We probably won't even play all of it, but can you guess what song I'm about to play? Yes, it was the song I sent out, indeed. And what song was that, Luna? Yes. Let's see, does this even work? I'll just play a few verses. World will be as one, the world will live as one. So, okay, this song, like, what's the thing? What is it with this song? Like, what is this song articulating? How do you hear it in 2022? Yeah. No. old pigeon chest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's complicated.
Yeah.
And I thought the same thing too about person showing
Yeah. Yeah.
you
In the
know,
Norman
that
Fisher
one
article. Yeah. So, what? Okay, so I don't mean to interrupt, but what? So when these artists, when we have this like realization that they were shitty, for want of a better word, why is that problematic, or how is that problematic, or how does that?
I don't know. I think it actually is one of the things. I like the discussion about imagination.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same thing about things being good,
Right.
motivating, or bad. Have this thing in mind.
Right.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
Or it's something that's really just a distraction. How do you parse that? What's sort of good
Yeah.
imagination versus, and
Yeah.
I guess getting back to, thinking about, these imperfect beings who had, made great art,
Yeah. This.
and
Yeah.
each thing, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, here, this is the conundrum, and this is in fact. So this in this class, we're going to be studying these 6 ideals. Are they ideals? We'll look at a handout in a second. What these 6 things are, uh, giving, ethical discipline, uh, vigor or heroic effort or some kind of effort, patience, uh, meditation or concentration, and wisdom. These things that are like maybe ideals, maybe characteristics that we could aspire to, but are also maybe things we practice. Like I can practice giving, I can practice generosity, but it's also an ideal. Like what are these things? They're all qualities that we could imagine that we could perfect, right? And yet, each one of us is imperfect, and yet, each one of us contains together with all beings. So how do we work with that? I don't know if this. I had completely forgotten about this moment because internet memory is like a fruit fly's memory. But do you guys remember the Gal Gadot um, debacle with this song at the beginning of COVID? Does anyone remember that? So Gal Gadot, Israeli, movie star, Wonder Woman. She's gorgeous and wealthy and successful, and so she did this Instagram like March 18th, 2020, 6 days into lockdown, where she got a whole bunch of her Hollywood A-list friends to. I'm sounding really snotty about this, and actually, that's kind of. I mean, I'm not. I don't mean to sound snotty because I'm a bodhisattva, and but it's actually that's kind of what is at stake with all of this. So she got her Hollywood A-list friends, and everyone sang a line of Imagine. So the Instagram starts with Gal Gadot talking into the camera, and she says, "Day 6 in self-quarantine, and I got to say that these past few days got me feeling a bit philosophical. This virus has affected the entire world. Everyone. Doesn't matter who you are, where you are from. We're all in this together. I saw this video of this Italian guy playing a trumpet from the balcony to all the other people locked inside their homes. He was playing Imagine, and there was something so powerful and pure about this video." It goes like this. And then she starts to sing it. And she was eviscerated online for this because it was, I mean, I'll send you, I have to now send you guys the link if you don't remember it. I don't know, Micah, if you have any memories of this moment. Yeah, why were you pissed off?
Because it's like they have the wealth and the funds to like hide off in their, Malibu homes
Yeah.
that have like 20 bedrooms and
Yeah.
bathrooms, and everyone else is like, there are people like floating bodies in New York City.
Yes.
Feel very out of touch.
Yeah. It was kind of tone deaf.
Yeah.
And yet, and this goes back to what you're saying, Andy, and this goes back to what I was trying to talk about with courage. Like, we're gonna screw it up. So this, she's saying we're all in this together, right? One of the things I love about this snippet of like social history is that it actually illustrates the way that we are all responding to ideals. So she's inspired by this Italian trumpet player and what he performed of this song. And she says, it was so pure, it was so powerful and pure. In Buddhist terminology, another foursome, this is like what happened to the Buddha before he was the Buddha, when he left the palace walls, inspired by a somewhere over the rainbow moment, like the world is there's something wrong, I got to find the answer. So he leaves his life of privilege and he goes outside with his charioteer and his favorite horse. I love that part of the story. And hangs out in downtown Kapilavastu, and he sees 4 sights. He sees, over the course of several days, he sees an old man, he sees someone sick, he sees a corpse, and then the 4th sight, he sees a holy man, he sees a sadhu, he sees a monk. That is what makes all of us bodhisattvas, is that we all have access to that level of inspiration. Something so powerful and so pure, says Gal Gadot. And yet, because of that, and this is where Val gets us out over our skis and in danger every time, like, we get inspired, and if we lean into that, we will ultimately, sooner or later, screw things up, right? Does that seem right?
This makes me think it takes a fool to experience the world.
It takes a fool to experience the world. So what is the value? Okay, so you're Gal Gadot. Well, okay, let's not even do that thought experiment. But what is the value then of that whole movement of, being inspired by that which is pure and powerful, then like enacting it in the world and screwing it up? Like, why is that the way things seem to play out? Is there any rhyme or reason in that? Yeah, Yosen.
I just feel like it's the vulnerability and that's when I think about being a bodhisattva, I just want to get out of my own skin and anything that helps me feel my heart again. Yeah. And so being vulnerable is the big step for me.
Allowing yourself to resonate with these things that are inspiring, right? Even when you don't understand them. A friend of mine, my husband sells out-of-print rare books, and it's like a book finder and antiquarian. And our house is filled with just ridiculous old books, most of which are, it turns out old books, just because they're old doesn't mean they're worth anything. Just saying. But a friend of ours was looking through the old books, and he came across an early 19th century book, Irish book about bogs. Okay, and he took it. He's like, "Can I take this home?" And he started reading it, and was like, "This is about bogs." And then he's like, "I don't know what it is, but there's something here." And he started researching it, and there is no end to this story yet. Like, he still doesn't know why, but that's this, right? That's this thing that seems crucial, is to let stories affect us, let images affect us, let life affect us in ways we don't control. That's what it is to be on the path. And we will screw it up. But this is where what you're saying, like, of like being with it. Like, we will screw it up, and so we better be paying attention, right, to how it feels, so we know, oh, that, well, it wasn't really about bogs after all. It was really, whatever, so that we course correct. So the teachings of the paramitas, the six perfections, right? Ancient teaching in Buddhism. These 10 in the original formulation, and then 6 in the later formulation. These 6 ideals or characteristics or whatever they are, the teachings around them are teachings that are all about these kinds of things that can inspire us, right? And that can get us into action, as Myobun's saying, to like, so my heart can feel again. The very earliest, so, I say I didn't order a book because there isn't any book that I think you need to read, but the 4 books about the paramitas that are widely available now that I would recommend. So there's Norman Fisher's, and these are all in the handout I'm about to hand out. Reb Anderson's Entering the Mind of Buddha, Dale Wright's The Six Perfections, and Diane Rossetto's Deep Hope. And I'll just, pass them around for what it's worth. So that you can find books that talk about these, that talk about, well, what's generosity? What are some ways to practice generosity? What does it mean? What is it about? But the earliest ways of studying the paramitas were through the Jataka tales, through stories about the person who would become the Buddha, their prior lives for eons and eons, kalpas and kalpas into the past. So how do you figure out what it means to live a life together with all beings? You look at stories of other people on the way, trying to live a life together with all beings. And that's going to be a lot of what animates us in the weeks to come, looking at stories from this book, Rafe Martin's Endless Path, and maybe from other books. And then also because koans mess us up in ways that are super fun and interesting, opening our heart and mind, we'll also be looking at koans. And we will also be talking about the koans of our own lives. Okay? So by way of very, very brief intro into, is this all making some sense, I'm hoping? Very brief intro into the first paramita, which I'll be talking with you guys about.
This is the longest we've ever had to wait for a handout.
I know. I know. Thank you. I'm trying. I did mess around with a song, though. And we won't spend, but it's a typical Myobun handout with lots of text on it, which we probably won't look at very much. So I just want to read the first paragraph in that box, or have someone read that. This is Dogen, the Japanese founder of our tradition, 13th century monk teacher. And this is his advice for talking about the first of the 6 perfections, the 6 paramitas. And the word paramita is generally translated as perfection, but there are at least 2 different ways to translate it more literally. We can think of paramita as meaning like the highest, like the summit. For those in the Noble Truth class, when I was talking about right effort, right speech, that sama of right, which also means like the highest. It's paramita might mean the highest in that way, the best, the biggest, the sublime. Or paramita, and this is the way most people translate the word, might mean something like going beyond, like what it means to cross over to the other shore where we actually are living together with all beings. Anyway, can someone read Dogen on the perfection of giving? Who would care to read? Anyone?
I will.
Thank you, Robert.
In principle, although nothing is truly one's own, this does not prevent us from giving. Do not disdain even a small offering. Its giving will surely bear fruit. Therefore, we should give even a line or a verse of the Dharma, sowing good seeds for this life and other lives. We should give even a penny or a single blade of grass of resources, establishing good roots for this world and other worlds. The Dharma is a resource, and resources are the Dharma. Without coveting
So there's a lot here, which we'll unpack a little bit more in a couple weeks. But this first couple of sentences, in principle, although nothing is truly one's own, this does not prevent us from giving. Do not disdain even a small offering. Its giving will surely bear fruit. Now, how do you understand those two lines? What does it mean to say, although nothing is truly one's own, first of all? What?
Just a bunch of Zen talk.
Yeah, just a bunch of Zen talk. Care to unpack the Zen talk a little bit?
I don't think I'm not qualified to.
Yeah.
I can
You're
identify
you're
it as
you're
like, we're talking about this big
Yeah.
thing and nothing, everything being so interconnected.
Yeah,
It's
it's-
impossible
yeah.
to say that one thing is separate from another, and it could
Yeah.
be mine or it could be yours.
Yeah, so we're all together with all beings. We're all in this together, so nothing is truly my own. And yet, this does not prevent us from giving. So what's he saying there? You know, yeah. So I don't have to wait to give, but also like this sense that, it's not, even though we all share everything, in truth, that may be the ultimate truth, but that ultimate truth shouldn't keep me on this like day-to-day practice from giving, consciously giving. Even though in the end, we all share everything together, we're all going to die, right? The earth is going to take us all back. It's all life. If that were, it's like I work in a hospital. We're all going to die, so should we not try to save people when they come into the ER? Right?
We're in
Yeah.
different dimensions. You have to find a place where you can work from.
Yeah.
Always focus on like the big things, the practice, actual like real tangible world where I have like Samu and
Yeah. And here's the piece, and we'll close with this. So even though we're all in this together, right? And even though we can, on some ultimate level, we know that we can know that to be true. It doesn't present us on this sort of physical level. But then there's this other extra part of this that I think is super important, which is the reason it's important to give is because it helps us see the way in which that ultimate level is true. Right? Do not disdain even a small offering. Its giving will surely bear fruit. Why will it bear fruit? Because by giving, we start to soften that part of ourselves that actually doesn't believe that nothing is mine. So the 4 passages underneath this are different ways that these 4 different books talk about this. And we can take this up next time. But I just want to encourage you guys. This was a lot of kind of talkity-talk stuff. But I want to encourage you guys to lean into the potential for us to, as Myobun was saying, to kind of feel things in the heart through this discussion of the paramitas, and to kind of work that circuit out of imagination where we could imagine our way into things being different, but that it might involve us taking some risks. So that's what we're going to be exploring together in this class. So let's pause here. Any questions or thoughts before we close out with the refuges? Yeah. just that reminder that the understanding that allows us to recognize that we're connected, that points us toward thinking, how do we do this life of ours better? Inevitably, when we try to act out of those impulses, we find ourselves grappling with our karma. We find ourselves grappling with the ways in which the world around us is broken. And we will also find ways in which, despite what we think are our intentions, we screw it up. We have our Gal Gadot moments. But this is why the favorite adjective for the bodhisattva is fearless. Not because we actually don't have any fears, but because we recognize that this is tender stuff. So we can be fearless bodhisattvas together and explore these 6 qualities of an awakened heart and soften into them together. Okay? So in future classes, it'll be way more, depending on what we're dealing with, but it'll be way more kind of working together on stuff. And I just encourage us all to dive right in. So it's customary for us to close with the Pali refuges. And the text of them, if you don't know it, is in the sutra book, but you can just kind of hum along and take it as we go. Buddham saranam gacchami, Dhammam saranam gacchami, Sangham saranam gacchami, Dutiyampi Buddham saranam gacchami, Dutiyampi Dhammam saranam gacchami, Dutiyampi Sangham saranam gacchami, Tatiyampi Buddham saranam gacchami, Tatiyampi